I've poured concrete with sirens in my ears and dust in my teeth. The kind of work where you hold your breath and hope the world doesn't shake before the slab cures. So when I moved out to Copper Ridge County and decided to build a 4-car garage with a small workshop, I thought it would be the quietest project of my life. No HOA, no shared fences, just 2.8 acres of wind and sagebrush and a sky that makes you feel honest. On day 3, the footings were in rebar, tied clean framing crew booked for Monday, and that's when a white crossover crept up my gravel lane like it was stalking a secret. She didn't introduce herself. Crisp blouse, aviator's clipboard, tucked like a badge, 3 quick photos gone. I stood there with a chalk line in one hand and a PVC coupling in the other, a little amused, a little confused, thinking, that's new. The next morning, a manila envelope sat in my mailbox with no return address. Violation notice, unapproved structure. Apparently issued by Pinecrest Bluffs Homeowners Association. Very concerned about the architectural tone of my industrial outbuilding. Demanding demolition to maintain visual continuity along Juniper Crest Lane. 2 problems with that: I don't live on Juniper Crest Lane, and Pinecrest Bluffs ends 200 feet below my property, at a drainage easement you could spot on a cloudy day. My parcel is agricultural residential, specifically excluded from the HOA. I had a laminated county boundary map because I'm that guy. I circled the easement in red, emailed their generic address, and wrote, "Appreciate the enthusiasm. But my land is not within Pinecrest Bluffs. Please keep your rules on your side of the line." I figured the grown-up thing would end it. It didn't. 2 days later, a sheriff's cruiser rolled up polite as Sunday, young Deputy Thumb resting on his belt. "The way they teach it a morning, sir." We received reports of unpermitted building, unsafe slope work, and noise violations affecting the community below. I smiled. "You want the paperwork or the deluxe tour?" 10 minutes later, we were in my site trailer with permits laid out like a royal flush soil, engineering report, zoning exemption structural, and fire approval stamped and signed. He called the permit office on speaker. They confirmed every line. His shoulders dropped an inch. He handed my papers back. "Looks like you're squared away." "Mr. Carter," I asked how many complaints. He glanced at his tablet. 3 this week. He left apologizing the way decent people do when they've been sent on a fool's errand. That night I opened the neighborhood app I try to avoid, because it turns adults into hall monitors top post by Deb L. Concerned large industrial structure threatening our viewshed. It read like a campaign speech for visual righteousness. Lots of talk about harmony and tone and protecting our ridge character. And then the kicker, Pinecrest, was reviewing a motion to expand jurisdiction to include properties that affect the visual character of the neighborhood. Translation: if they can see it, they want to rule it. I didn't comment. I started a folder on my desktop labeled Pinecrest Paper Blast Trail and began keeping score. The next morning, a reflection flickered in the junipers along the county easement. I parted the branches and found a little weatherproof camera zip tied to a limb lens straight at my slab. I didn't touch it. Called the sheriff. Different deputy this time, older, the kind of gaze that says he's seen enough human behavior to be unimpressed. He squinted at the camera. Technically, it's on public land, which is messy, but aimed at your house like that. You stack this with the other stuff, we're creeping toward harassment. I showed him a note I'd found under my windshield wiper. Bold letters warning your project disrupts the Pinecrest aesthetic. Continued construction may result in escalated community response. Pale watermark behind the text. Pinecrest Bluffs logo. He took photos, whistled under his breath. You've got yourself a neighbor who thinks she's the county. That night, I did what people do when someone starts narrating their life for them. I told my side clean and public. $12 for a domain. milesnotyourho.com simple site permits. Boundary map with a fat green highlight over my parcel, a timeline, a receipt counter that ticked up each time something new happened. By lunch, the page had 500 views. By dusk, an email arrived from a guy who'd resigned off the Pinecrest board. You're not crazy. This style of control spreads like mold if you let it. You know what I mean. The next move came out of left field. Hi, Mr. Carter. This is Denise with Building Services. Did you mean to withdraw your construction permit before we process the revocation? I pulled my truck over and let the dust catch up to me. I did not. She said the signature didn't match prior filings, and the language felt off. They keep visitor logs did I want to come in. 10 minutes later, I was watching a scanned revocation form with my typed name and a wobbly signature box, checked filed by HOA representative on behalf of resident with consent. Security footage showed a woman in a white blouse and aviators, claiming she was helping an elderly veteran. The clerk had done the right thing, made copies, flagged it. I stared at the screen and laughed once, not because it was funny, but because audacity like that almost demands applause. Yeah, that happened. On the drive home, the anger cooled into a sharper edge. If you've ever watched someone try to turn fiction into policy before your eyes, you know the feeling. You want to throw a brick at a cloud. I don't do bricks. I do documentation, and sometimes to help documentation along, I set bait. At dusk, I planted a new sign near my gate, HOA correspondence drop, authorized only, mounted a small metal mailbox beneath it, with nothing inside, and tucked a night vision camera under a low branch pointed perfectly. 48 hours later, at 1:13 a.m., motion alert buzzed my phone. The recording shows a white crossover easing up my lane with lights off a flashlight beam, bobbing like a lure. The same woman steps out, glances around, and with raccoon grace in heels, rips my private property. Not Pinecrest Bluff sign-off. Its post snaps the stake, tosses it in her back seat, drives off like she just completed a covert mission against plywood. I watched it twice, once for clarity, once for satisfaction. The next morning I posted the video on milesnotyourho.com under a red header hot in the act. HOA President trespasses and tampers, with posted sign at 1:13 a.m. I added side-by-side crops of the forged withdrawal signature, and my real one, arrows pointing where the pen lies. By noon, the site had 6,000 views. My inbox lit up sidewalk chalk. Incidents: aggressive vertical element flagpoles, tomato cages that violated vista harmony. Different towns, same tone. I brought a hard drive and a diner-thick folder to the sheriff's office, filed a formal complaint. They opened an investigation. I filed a public records request on the HOA president's address. Waited a week that felt like a year. And when the results landed, they sang. Her backyard shade pavilion. The one she bragged about on the neighborhood app didn't exist in the county system. No permit. No inspection. A ghost. The footprint of her attached garage was off by hundreds of square feet on the tax record, too. I packaged everything with satellite measurements, emailed the assessor, and updated the site with a cheerful section titled, "Let's all follow the rules." People ate it up. Someone set cartoon sneaking music under the night video. A local reporter called. I walked him through the timeline like a docent in a museum of pettiness. He tried to keep a straight face and failed. when I told him about the invented phrase she'd been pushing online, Skyline Vista Corridor. There is no corridor. She made it up because it sounds official, and that's the entire play. Invent authority, say it with confidence and hope nobody checks the map. Court felt like stepping into a cool library where truth has to talk slow and wear a tie. My attorney, Laura Serrano, sat beside me with the practiced calm of someone who wrestles cities for a living. Across the aisle, the HOA president, Deborah Larkin, had a lawyer who looked freshly ironed and permanently surprised. Judge Hartley took the bench clipped and focused. Pinecrest's lawyer floated poetry about community cohesion and line of sight, while Mr. Carter's parcel is technically outside Pinecrest Bluffs. His structure is visible from our neighborhood. Our charter prioritizes visual harmony. In that sense, his garage is within our sphere. The judge blinked. Are you arguing jurisdiction by eyesight? That anything visible from Pinecrest must comply with Pinecrest rules? Should I also issue you a permit to police sunsets? A cough hid a laugh in the gallery. Laura laid our case out simple county approvals in order false complaints to law enforcement surveillance aimed at my home, threatening communications using HOA insignia, a forged permit withdrawal. Trespass, tampered signage. We played the video. At the moment Deborah yanked my sign, her lawyer studied his shoes like they might fly. We showed the lobby footage and the assessor's letter. The judge looked at the stack, then at Deborah, then back to us. In 30 years, I have seen HOA overreach. But this is advanced. Injunction granted. Cease and desist. No contact, no entry within 100 feet of my boundary. Referral to the county attorney on the forgery. Our civil claim for defamation and harassment could proceed. I didn't cheer. I breathed. After the ruling, a local headline read, "Judge to HOA line of sight." Isn't jurisdiction, my drafting students handed me a coffee mug that said, "Not your HOA. Not today. Not ever." The neighborhood app changed tone like the weather. A week later, the county updated a public record clarifying Pinecrest couldn't expand jurisdiction across the drainage easement without formal annexation and landowner consent. I printed that line and taped it inside my toolbox lid next to the 916 that always disappears. The garage stands finished, now steel roof that sings in the rain. Doors that glide like they're on ice outlets everywhere, because I'm done playing musical chords. Some evenings I stand in the doorway, let the light fall across the floor, and think how close this came to being told in past tense. How if a clerk hadn't hesitated, if I hadn't tucked a camera under a branch, a made-up phrase like Skyline Vista Corridor might have turned into a real cudgel. We like to imagine power wears a uniform and carries a badge, but a lot of the time it wears a smile, carries a clipboard, speaks fluent passive aggression, and it thrives in silence. The email that arrived a month later had no greeting as Pinecrest's amended charter, attached one line admitting my property is not, and has never been subject to their covenants to prior claims. Null and void. I printed it and set it next to a photo of the slab on day one. That's about as close to an apology as machines built on certainty ever get. So tell me, this should a neighbor have power over whatever they can see from their driveway? Or does ownership stop at the line on the map, no matter how offended someone feels about your roof pitch or paint color? Drop your take in the comments. Tell me where you're watching from, what you've seen. HOAs get right or horribly wrong, and if you've got a story that needs daylight, tell it. If you think I push too far, say that too. Hit like so more folks find this, subscribe for more real stories with real receipts, and share this with anyone who needs a reminder that a boundary is a boundary, on a map in a courtroom and at your mailbox.